And we're going to stick with that story. Official results from Myanmar's general election have come through, and we now know Aung San Suu Kyi's party has won a majority. Let's get a bit more on this now. We can speak to Simon Adams from the Global Centre for the Responsibility to Protect. Thank you very much for coming on the programme. So let's start with the election itself. Back-to-back wins now, as another 5 years ahead of her. What do you make of the election itself?
Well, I mean, it's been a great victory for Aung San Suu Kyi, obviously, and I think that will be the story that is in many of the international newspapers and that will be sent around the world. But I guess my question, as somebody who comes from a human rights background and in terms of the work that's done by my centre, is at what cost? Because I think it's fair to say that this election was not free. And certainly it's not democratic when you're systematically disenfranchised, for example, the minority Rohingya community in Rakhine State in the north. And also there were many other areas in the country, in Chin, in Shan State, and in areas of Kachin, where the Electoral Commission simply didn't let people from minority populations vote. So that's about 1.5 to 2 million people who didn't get to vote simply because they were of a particular ethnic group and were in the wrong part of the country. So I think in some ways it's been a consolidation of the power of Aung San Suu Kyi, but at what cost for democracy in Myanmar?
Well, let's just remind ourselves a little first before we kind of ponder that question a bit more. She will be remembered for lots of people around the world as a hero figure. Just remind us why that status has fallen.
I mean, it's been a remarkable fall from grace. I mean, here's somebody who was seen as a kind of an icon of the democratic movement, as somebody who stood up for the human rights of all her fellow citizens in Myanmar under the military dictatorship. And yet, of course, when she was elected, after having, come to some kind of terms with the military after the last election, she has basically presided over a period in which atrocities were perpetrated by Myanmar's military against the ethnic Rohingya minority in the northern part of the country in Rakhine State. She not only was, of course, the head of state when that was happening, she then even went so far when a case was brought against her country at the International Court of Justice, something which I was very proud to play a small part in. She literally went to The Hague, to stand in The Hague and to defend Myanmar's military against a charge of genocide. So I think for many people, it's an extraordinary fall to go from human rights icon to genocide denialist in a single lifetime is quite an arc in somebody's narrative and in somebody's CV.
Well, given that's your assessment, clearly, given that, what do you think the next 5 years hold?
Well, I think it's going to be a rocky period in Myanmar because I think the military still views her somewhat suspiciously, despite everything I just said, because of her history, still views her somewhat suspiciously. Democracy is very attenuated. As I said, I don't believe it can be a true democracy if you're systematically discriminating against people and disenfranchising particular people. And I think she's going to have to look at her base and her supporters who still see her as not only a Burmese nationalist, but as somebody who they want to see as expanding freedom, expanding democracy in Myanmar. And yet there's many, many people on the sidelines who are deeply disappointed with what happened. So how she's going to resolve all those contradictions remains to be seen.
OK, Simon, thank you very much for coming on the programme and talking us through that. That's Simon Adams.
Thank you.